Second. Okay.
Recording in progress.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. It's Monday night, so it's Parshat, and this week's Parshat is Eikev. So what we're going to do today is learn one of the very important parts of Eikev that we happen to say a few times a day in davening. That is the second Parsha of Shema, V'hoyim Shemaya. And that's in chapter 11, Pasuk Yud Gimel, chapter 11, Pasuk 13. Okay, Yud Aleph, Pasuk Yud Gimel. Okay, so now we know that we have the first Parsha of Shema, that we say, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad V'ahavta, and then we have the second paragraph of Shema, which is V'hoyim Shemaya. Okay? Now, the Gemara says, why do we say Shema before V'hoyim Shemaya? Okay, in Chumash, Shema was in last week's Parsha, V'hoyim Shemaya is in this week's Parsha. But the Gemara asks, why do we say Shema before V'hoyim Shemaya? And the Gemara says, first accept my kingdom, and then you accept my mitzvahs. In other words, last week, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad means we're accepting the sovereignty of God. Echad means only God exists, nothing else exists. Then, in the second parsha, which is in this week's parsha, V'hoyim Shemaya speaks about accepting mitzvahs. If you do the mitzvahs, then Hashem will give you everything you need. If you don't accept mitzvahs, Hashem's going to stop the rain, and you're going to be destroyed and driven out of the land, and so on and so forth. So the Gemara says, first we need to accept the yoke of heaven, and then we can accept the yoke of mitzvahs. But there's an interesting thing. The first parsha of Shema is all singular. V'yahavta es Hashem Elokecha b'chol levavcha nafshecha. It's all singular term. V'hoyim Shemaya is all plural. Shemaya tishma'u is plural. Mitzvah eschem v'chol levavchem u'v'chol nafshechem. It's all plural. Okay? Another thing what's interesting about the parshas, the Gemara says, the first parsha of Shema, Shema V'ahavta, is the Jews are Osin Retzono Shemakom. They're doing the will of Hashem. Second parsha, the Gemara says, is Ein Osin Retzono Shemakom. They're not doing the will of Hashem. Now, the simple explanation of that is, first one, the second parsha speaks if you're going to sin. The first parsha it says, love Hashem with all your heart and soul, and learn Torah and put on tefillin and all that stuff. But the second parsha speaks if you don't listen to Hashem. But there's a deeper significance in that. And that is, in the first parsha of Shema, we say, V'ahavta Hashem Elokecha b'chol levavcha, b'chol nafshecha, u'v'chol me'odecha. Okay? All your heart, all your soul. Me'odecha means all your might, or another interpretation with all your money. Because some people love their money more than they love themselves. Some people love themselves more than they love the money. So the Torah says, anyway, you got to love Hashem, with all your heart and soul and all your... But if you notice in the second parsha, in the Pasuk Yud Gimel, it just says, to love Hashem, b'chol levavchem, u'v'chol nafshechem. It doesn't say b'chol me'otchem, like it does in the first parsha. Okay, what's the difference? What is the definition of ma'od? Ma'od basically means infinite. Ma'od actually means the infinite within the person. That's what ma'od means, tremendous. Ma'od means a lot. That means it's not the normal amount. It's more than the normal amount. Now what does that mean in practical things? A lot of people could be serving Hashem very well, but it's still within their nature. The real serving of Hashem is basically when you break your nature, when you break yourself to reach Hashem. As long as a person is serving Hashem with their own nature, that's their limitations. So they're serving Hashem with their limited form, whatever it may be. To reach an infinite God, you can't reach an infinite God through finite work. You can't reach infinite by counting 1, 2, 3, 4. It just doesn't go. You can't count infinite 1, 2, 3, 4 and reach infinite. The only way you can reach infinite with as much as it's feasible within a person is when a person breaks their nature, then they're called reaching God. And that's what the concept of Chom Odecha means, and that's why we learned this many times. There's a famous Gemara in Chagiga. The Gemara says, they call it a pasuk, and it says, Ushaftem Isem, you should sit and see the difference between tzaddik and a rasha, okay, and Oved Elokim Lasher Lo Avado. So the pasuk says like this: look at the difference between a tzaddik and a rasha, between one who serves God and one who doesn't. So the Gemara says it's not redundancy. You can say, okay, one who serves Hashem is the tzaddik, one who doesn't serve Hashem is the rasha. But that's not what the Torah is using extra words. Okay, it says Oved Elokim is not a tzaddik. Oved Elokim and Lo Avodai, one who serves God, one who doesn't serve God, is not a tzaddik or a rasha. It's really what's called the Beinani that the Alter Rebbe talks about in Tanya. What's the difference? The Gemara says this. It's not Chassidus. The Gemara says, what does Oved Elokim mean? A person who studies the Talmud 101 times. Who is not serving God? Lo Avodai, not serving God. The guy who learns it 100 times. And the Gemara explains that what does it mean? And the Alter Rebbe elaborates in Tanya, explaining it, in a more Chassidic level language. But the bottom line is like this. In the olden times, they didn't have printed Gemaras like we have today. They didn't have printed books like we have today. When they wanted to remember it, it was all oral, right? So they would review it. The nature was to review it 100 times, just to remember it. So when you learned the Gemara 100 times, that was your nature. And the Gemara says that's called not serving God. Because serving God means reaching God, reaching the infinite. You learn it 101 times. You break your nature. That's called reaching God. That's called the infinite. And you're going to elaborate on this because a person, that's the concept of going out of Egypt. Egypt means your nature, limitations. So the bottom line is, in order for a finite person to reach the infinite God, we have to break our nature. That's the concept b'chol me'odecha. With all your might means going above and beyond your nature. This first parsha where it says v'aftas Hashem Elokecha b'chol levavcha, b'chol nafshecha, b'chol meidacha, speaking to individuals, an individual can reach b'lava b'chol me'odecha by breaking their nature. For one person who learns, let's say, 10 minutes a day, breaking their nature would be learning 11 minutes a day. Okay? But a person that learns 10 hours a day, and he learns 10 hours a day, it's called not serving God. He's learning a lot. 10 hours a day versus 10 minutes a day. But the bottom line is, he's not breaking his nature. And that's what Hashem really likes. When are you called serving Hashem? When it calls Me'odecha, your nature. Now that you're breaking your particular individual nature, that is called, the Gemara says, that's called serving Hashem. What do you want?
In one point in the Shema it says, V'shinantam levanecha. Another point in the Shema it says, V'lima v'temotam. What's the difference?
Okay, we'll get to me when not tonight.
Okay.
But that's a whole different story. Okay, so first you have, so Oisin Utein Shemaka means they're doing the will of Hashem. That's, so to speak, a revelation from above. Ein Oisin Utein Shemaka, meaning you're not serving Hashem properly. Now, last week's parsha was called Va'eschanan. Va'eschanan also comes from the word matnas chinam, a gift. Chanun, merciful, means it's a gift from above. This week's parsha is called Eikev Tishma'un. Eikev literally means when you will hear. Hear. Shmiya, listening. Next week's parsha is Re'ei Anechi Neisin Lefnechem. See, I'm giving you before. So these three parshas are very interesting. It's explained. Va'eschanan is the gift from above. the gift from above. And then there's two ways. There's serving Hashem with hearing, which means understanding. And there's a way of serving Hashem with seeing, which is seeing is believing with belief. Okay? And that's why, interestingly, the Pasuk starts off this week's Parsha. I was going to mention it later, but the first Pasuk of the Parsha, chapter Zion. Here, Pasuk Yud Beis. Eikev tishma'un. Eikev simply means it will be when you listen. But Rashi says Eikev also comes from the word heel. Akev in Hebrew is the heel. In other words, Rashi says even mitzvahs that people step on, what they hear, that means they're not important to them. The Torah says you also keep those mitzvahs too. Because there's nothing unimportant in Yiddishkeit. Every custom, every slight detail of Yiddishkeit is very important. But another interpretation, Kabbalah, it says, Eikev refers to the time right before Mashiach. Eikev said the Mashiach, the heel right before the coming of Mashiach. The Torah says, V'hoya, the Gemara says, is an expression of Simcha. Eikev Tishmun. You know what the Simcha V'hoya is? The Gemara says the word V'hoya means Simcha. Vayehi is pain, and Hoya is Simcha, the Gemara says. So V'hoya means Eikev, even in the era right before Mashiach. Tishmun, you still listen to the mitzvahs? That would be so good, because even though there's no godliness, there's no miracles, that we know that we're living with, so on and so forth. Nevertheless, so Eikev Tishmun means listening, hearing means what you do. Understanding on your own, come to the realization of God and living with godliness. Then you come to a higher level of Re'iyah, seeing, that's even above understanding. That's why the expression is, if I see it, I don't have to understand it, I see it. Something I understand, you can prove to me I don't. Right? If I see this water bottle on the table, you could bring me a million proofs that it's not here. You're not going to convince me because I saw it. That's what the expression seeing is believing. Because seeing is you're one with the thing you see, much more than listening. So the Torah is teaching us now in serving Hashem. Vaschana means Hashem is giving us gifts from above. What is the gift? Eikev, the next parsha. Eikev, the heel, understanding godliness. And we come to next week's parsha, which is Re'ei, even a higher level of even seeing God. Okay? Okay, so the whole greatness is a person should serve Hashem with his doing. No gifts from above. Hashem wants that we should create a relationship with Hashem. Yes, we get the power to do it because Hashem gives us this power from above. V'eschanan, Hashem gives us a gift from above that He enables us as finite human beings to be able to reach the infinite. And that's the gift that Hashem gives us from above. But there's another interesting thing the Gemara learns out. How do we know there's a biblical mitzvah to daven, to pray? Okay, you have a lot of mitzvahs when it comes to prayer. Okay? There's a big argument in Halal, Ramban, a lot of the codifiers are arguing, is davening biblical or rabbinic? Because the Gemara says, when it says in now this week's Parsha, in Perek Yud Aleph, Pasuk Yud Gimel, the first Parsha of Vayim Shmuel, Ula'avdei b'chol levavchem, to serve God with all your heart. What do you mean, how do you serve God with your heart? And the Gemara says, what is avodah shebelev? What is considered worshiping God with the heart? That's tefillah. Learning, you're serving God with your head. Davening is like a sacrifice. You're sacrificing your animal soul. You're working with yourself to become closer to Hashem. That is the biblical source of davening. From this pasuk, Ula'avdei b'chol levavchem. Okay? And the Gemara says, what is avodah shebelev? That is davening. Because, again, learning Torah you use with your head, not with your heart. But here's an interesting point. When it comes to davening, even in Pirkei Avos, when it says the world stands on three things, Torah, Avodah, and Gemilas Chsadim. So Avodah over there means, in the time of the Beis HaMikdash, it refers to the Korbanos, Avodas HaKorbanos. Avodah in the Beis HaMikdash. Right? V'hashiv Avodah, we say in Ritzei. Hashem should return the service to the Beis HaMikdash. So Avodah represents the Avodah Beis HaMikdash. Now we don't have a Beis HaMikdash. What is Avodah? What's instead of sacrifices? Davening. Davening is instead of sacrifices. So it's interesting. You never will find, by learning Torah, the word Eved, Avdei. It will say Limud HaTorah, learning Torah. Eisek HaTorah, occupation is Torah. You'll have expression Yegia BaTorah, making an effort, diligence in Torah. You will never have the word Eved, Avodas Atfilah. You have Torah, Avodah, but Torah is not Avodah. Eved, Avodah comes from the word Eved. Eved, what is the concept of a slave? And the Gemara says, Lo'avdei b'chol avavchem, which is davening. In davening, we come to Hashem, as the Gemara uses the expression, like a slave before the master coming to ask their needs. But Eved has an interesting halachic definition to it. When a master has a slave, the slave is the existence of the master. Yad Eved ki Yad Rabbo. The hand of the servant, Gemara says, is the hand of the master. If a guy has a slave, and the slave walks in the street and finds a lost article, it doesn't belong to the slave. He's a slave of the master. He's not a non-existent entity. Okay? What does he do? It belongs to the master. And the Gemara says, it doesn't mean that first the slave acquires it, and then the master acquires it. It doesn't work like that. The hand of the slave is the hand of the master. That means he is a non-existent entity. He is only the existence of the master. And where do we see this very interestingly in Chumash? When Avram Avinu sent Eliezer, we know it was Eliezer, to find the shidduch for Rivka. For Yitzchak, right? So he sent him to Lavan's house, and he met Rivka by the well, and that whole stuff. We know, everybody ask every kid, who did Avram Avinu send? He sent Eliezer. Nowhere in Chumash does it say he sent Eliezer. In the whole Parshat Chayesora, countless times, it says Avram Avinu called Avdoi Zekan Beisai, his Eved. It says the Eved, the slave, took the camels. The Eved came to the well. The Eved did it. There is not even a mention of Eliezer. Not only that, when he made the shidduch pitch, finding the shidduch, so what did he say? Eved Avram Anechi. He said to Lavan and Besuel. All he said, Eved Avram Anechi, I'm Avram Avinu's servant. He didn't even say, Ani Eliezer Eved Avram. We only know it's Eliezer from Torah Shebal Peh. The Medrash says, who did Avram Avinu send? He sent Eliezer. But in the Chumash, it doesn't say one time the name Eliezer. And what's the explanation of it? Because the definition of an Eved, there is no entity called Eved. He is the existence of the master. He is the hand of the master. And that's what he is. When you learn Torah, you're not an Eved. Because you have to use your own head. You have to understand it on your level. Not only that, usually, it's not supposed to be like this. But a person who learns a lot gets ego from it. Oh, I'm a big scholar, I know how to learn, I'm great, I'm holy. What is prayer? Prayer is just the opposite. Prayer is, I am nothing, I'm an Eved. I don't deserve what I'm asking for. I'm asking God, please give me, like Nalish Manes in Damida. We ask God for help, all the things that we ask for. Okay? So davening is al-ovdei b'chol levavchem. The Gemara says, what is avoda shebalev? That is the concept of davening. Because the davening is different than learning. Learning, we take God's wisdom, so to speak, up there spiritually, and we bring it down to our heads. With lowering godliness into our head. In my head now has God's wisdom. Davening is just the opposite. Davening is me refining my animal soul, refining my body, refining my emotional attributes to become closer to Hashem. That is going from lower to higher. And you need both. You need both. We said many times, if you want to make a shidduch, it's a boy and a girl, yeah? So it could be one of three ways. Let's say New York and LA, okay? One's in New York, one's in LA. You can say, okay, New York goes to LA, one way, or LA goes to New York, second way, or they meet midway. Right? What happened when Hashem gave the Torah to us? Vayered Hashem al Har Sinai. Hashem came down on the mountain. God coming down. Val Moshe Amar, and to Moshe Rabbeinu, Hashem said to him, Alei Olakim, go up. Because if you want to make a match, shidduch, between heaven and earth, between us and Hashem, so there's an advantage of bringing godliness down. There's an advantage of godliness, of earth going up, and then you have the ultimate level. Because there's an advantage of higher coming down, there's an advantage of lower going up. I'll give you a simple example. You can go to a class, well, somebody will teach you. Okay? They'll teach you the material. And you'll know it. But you didn't do it. It was given to you. You didn't take the book on your own and break your head to figure out what it says and what it means and what it does. Right? So there's an advantage when somebody, or like we said many times, you could buy a bakery cake, yeah? What's still in there, but by the time it gets to your house, it's also bent up. But you buy it in the bakery, it's a perfect shaped cake, it's not overbaked, underbaked, it's perfect, yeah? Then you have one of your kids decide to bake a cake. Okay? It's a little lopsided, it's a little underbaked, overbaked, yeah? Now which cake is better? So there's an advantage about the bakery cake, it's a perfect cake. But you know what the disadvantage is? You didn't do it. The kid baked the cake. It might not be perfect, but they did it. It was their doing. That's what davening is. Davening is not bringing Hashem down into the world. Davening on the other end is going, the avodah, that's why it says it's called avodah. We learn out the concept of tefillah, because the concept of tefillah is actually the avodah of the Jew being an eved. What?
Why is it that when we daven, the Yetzer Hara tends to become a lot stronger, whereas when we learn, the Yetzer Hara takes a vacation?
I'm going to strengthen your question. It's a good question. I'm just going to strengthen it. When we davening, the Yetzer Hara bothers us more than we do the rest of the day. So the Alter Rebbe talks about this in Tanya. It's a very interesting thing he says. He says a person will think that if I'm getting all these, let's call them foreign thoughts. I'm getting all these foreign thoughts in the middle of davening, that shows I'm not davening well. Okay? Comes along the Alter Rebbe in Tanya and says just the opposite. He says like this: if you would have one soul, and that soul davens and has foreign thoughts, then you're right. If you have foreign thoughts, it shows that you're not davening properly. He said, but there's two souls. The godly soul and the animal soul. Now the nature of people when they fight, okay, if we're physically fighting, if you don't use a lot of power, neither do I. If you get stronger, then I have to use more power. Correct? Otherwise you're not going to win. He says, during the day, your Yetzer Tov is not functioning on a high. You're not learning, you're not davening, you're doing business or whatever you're doing, right? So the Yetzer Hara says, why bother him? He's not doing anything holy anyway. Why do I have to waste my strength on him? When a person's davening or learning, now you're doing good things. Now the Yetzer Hara has to get very strong. Understand? So the fact that the Rebbe says, the fact that the Yetzer Hara is coming to you during davening, that is a sign that you're davening well. Because if you wouldn't be davening well, why would he waste his time with you? Similar to what the Gemara says, there was first a discussion, one when then the Gemara ruled, who is greater? One who is commanded to do a mitzvah and does it, or one who is not commanded to do a mitzvah and does it? So the Gemara tells a story like this. There's an argument in the Gemara, is a blind person obligated to mitzvahs? Okay? So one of the great sages of the Gemara, Rabbi Yosef, was blind. One of the greatest sages of the Talmud was Rabbi Yosef, and he was blind. Rav Sheshes, a colleague, was also blind. Okay? So Rabbi Yosef said, he said like this, whoever tells me the law is that a blind person is not obligated to mitzvahs, I'm going to throw a party. Why? Because even though I'm not obligated, I do it anyway. So look how great I am. I'm not obligated and I do it anyway. But then he heard the halachic ruling that a person who's obligated to do a mitzvah and does it is greater than a person who's not obligated to do it. Okay?
Yeah.
So then he said, whoever says a blind person is obligated, I'll throw him a party, because now I'm obligated to do it. What is it? If you stop to think for a minute, you have a paid worker and you have a volunteer. Okay? Who's greater? Somebody would think a volunteer is greater because he's not even getting paid to do it and he does it. This guy has to do it, right? But really the truth is, the guy that's in the spiritual world, a kid that's not obligated to mitzvahs, right? The Yetzer Hara doesn't waste his time with the kid. Oh, don't do this, don't. He's not obligated anyway, who cares? Right? Years ago, I know today's kids are so spoiled. Years ago, little kids wanted to fast the whole day, and they wanted to do stay up a whole night Shavuos. They little kids wanted to do everything. Yeah? All of a sudden, they become bar mitzvahs. They're not interested anymore. Bar bas mitzvah. Why is it? It's the same concept. If you're not obligated in the mitzvah, the Yetzer Hara doesn't waste his time with you. You don't have to do it anyway. Why should I get, the Yetzer Hara said, why should you get tired fighting you, convincing you not to do it? You don't have to do it anyway. Who cares? Now you're obligated to do it. Now I'm going to get on your case. Now I'm going to make sure you don't do it. Okay? And that's the same thing. Now that you're davening, and you're davening well, that's when the Yetzer Hara comes and starts throwing in foreign thoughts. So it doesn't show that you're not davening well, it shows that you're davening well. Okay, there's another remarkable pasuk over here, and this is, okay, again, also in volume Shemaya. In Parak Yud Aleph, pasuk Tezvav, okay, chapter 11, sentence 15. It says like this, V'nasati Eisa v'sotcha levamtecha, I will give grass in the fields for your animals, v'yachalta v'savata, and you will eat them before. So the Medrash asks, the Medrash has a very simple question. The book of Devarim, we learned, Moshe Rabbeinu is speaking. It's not God speaking, dictating. Right? These are the words that Moshe Rabbeinu is speaking. Correct? So Moshe Rabbeinu is talking. If Moshe Rabbeinu is talking, how does he come along and say, I will give grass in the fields for your animals? Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't give grass, Hashem does. Right? V'nasati Moshe Rabbeinu is speaking. He said, I will give grass in the fields for your animals, and they will eat and be full.
Isn't grass also linked to one of the words for prayer? Sicha?
No, sorry, 1 second. So the Medrash answers a very simple answer. There's a famous expression, Shechina medaberes mitech grona shemoshe. When Moshe Rabbeinu spoke, it was God speaking through him. Okay? It's like a microphone. You know, the microphone's making the voice louder, right? but it's the microphone's not talking. The microphone's talking through. The person's talking through the microphone. So Moshe Rabbeinu was God's microphone. So when Hashem said, Moshe Rabbeinu said, "I will give grass in your field," it doesn't mean himself. It's God speaking through Moshe Rabbeinu. Okay, that's what it says. But Chassidus and Kabbalah explain this pasuk much, much deeper, and this is what explains is the role of a Moshe Rabbeinu. There's a pasuk in Tanakh that says, "V'zarati as Beis Yisrael." Hashem says, "I'm going to plant the Jewish souls, Zera Adam, seed of man, and Zera Behema, seed of animals." Okay, that means Hashem says in the pasuk, I am going to plant godly human souls and animal souls. So it says in Kabbalah and Chassidus, what does that mean? Because it refers to godly souls. Hashem says, Zerati is Beis Yisrael, okay, which is unique by Jews, the godly soul. Hashem says, I'm going to plant them. Zera Adam, neshamas of seed of man, and Zera Behema, seeds of an animal. So Kabbalah and Chassidus explain as follows. What's the difference between person and animal? I mean, many differences. But like we say in the first bracha of the Shemona Esrei, of the Amidah, after the initial three, Ato cheinen lo adam das. Das. Okay? The Gemara says, Adam yesh by das. Behema ein lo das. The Gemara says, a person has das, a behema, an animal, doesn't have das. It runs an instinct. But there's chachma, bina, and das. They're the three intellectual levels. Now, chachma is an initial spark of an idea. Bina is understanding it, broadening it. Okay? Similar to childbearing, which is, by the way, Chachma and Bina is Yud Hey of Hashem's name. Yud is Chachma, Hey is Bina, Vav is the six spheres, and Hey is Malchus, masculine and feminine. That's why in Hebrew, Ish, or masculine, is the masculine gender in Hebrew grammar is with a Yud at the end. Even the word Ish, Aleph Yud Shin. Feminine is when it's a Hey. That's why Isha is Ayin Aleph Shin Hey. Man has a Yud, woman has a Hey. Okay? So Seichel is Chachma Bina is understanding something. What is Das? Das is not a level of understanding. Das, the Alter Rebbe says in the third parak of Tanya, Das means binding yourself to the subject matter. Becoming one with the subject matter. In other words, feeling what you understand. You can have many doctors that can give you a whole health lecture about what healthy foods, and they'll eat every junk food possible. They will smoke. They will do everything unhealthy. And they can give you a 5-hour lecture why they shouldn't be doing what they themselves are doing. What's the difference? They understand it, but they don't feel it. Das is maturity, that you feel it. You can have a brilliant 10-year-old kid who's smarter than a lot of 15-year-olds, but he's still not bar mitzvah. He's not obligated to mitzvahs. You can't count him for a minyan. Either kid's brilliant, smarter than a 15-year-old, but he's lacking maturity of age. 13 is a certain level of maturity. It's not seichel. It's maturity, feeling it, becoming one with it. The pasuk says at the beginning of Chumash, "Va'adam yoda es Chava." Simply means Adam knew Chava. It means he was intimate with her. He became one with her. So das is something that you feel. Every godly soul has an understanding of godliness. Not every soul is capable down here of feeling godliness. They can understand godliness, but there's a big difference between understanding and feeling.
Understanding is Bina?
Chachma and Bina. Das is feeling it. So there are neshamas that are called Zera Adam and Zera Behema. So Chassidus and Kabbalah explain, Zera Adam means those lofty neshamas that have not only an understanding of God, they actually feel God. You know, when you feel something, you do it much better. Then there are neshamas that are called Zera Behema. Souls that are lacking this level of feeling of godliness. They might understand godliness. So it says the role of Moshe Rabbeinu, of a Rebbe in every generation, says in Kabbalah and Chassidus, what is the role of a Jewish leader? To reveal the level of das in every single neshama. Even, especially those neshamas that don't have it on their own, they don't have this feeling of godliness on their own. So where do they get it from? A Rebbe, Moshe Rabbeinu, or Moshe Rabbeinu in every generation, gives the level of das to understand godliness. Not only understand it, to feel it. This is what Moshe Rabbeinu is saying over here. Moshe Rabbeinu in this pasuk is not saying God is giving grass. Moshe Rabbeinu says, "V'nasati I, Moshe Rabbeinu, am giving Eikev grass." Now, without getting into it, because I don't understand what I'm talking about now, Eikev is spelled Ayin Shin Beis, or Sin Beis. So Ab Ayin Beis is one of the names of God that has to do with Das. And Shin, the letter Shin, also has 3 compartments to it. So it's also the level of Das. Anyway, so Eikev represents the level of Das. Don't ask me, that's what it says in the books. Eikev represents Das, feeling of godliness. Moshe Rabbeinu is not talking about physical grass, that, because we said, but Hashem is giving the grass, not him. But Moshe Rabbeinu says, my role as a leader is to give Eikev, which means das, this feeling, b'sadcha, into livehem techa, for those souls that are called Zera Behema. That means their animal soul, not the animal soul, the godly soul that is called animal because it doesn't have the feeling of godliness. V'achalta v'savata, and you'll eat and you'll become full. So Moshe Rabbeinu in this pasuk is actually saying what the role of a Moshe Rabbeinu is. Similar, we know that Moshe Rabbeinu, or the Jewish leaders, were called in Roya Neman, faithful shepherd. But there's a deeper meaning of Roya Neman, not a faithful shepherd, a shepherd of faith. There's a big difference. Faithful shepherd means the shepherd is doing a good job. Shepherd of faith means what does a shepherd do? He feeds the cattle. Right? He goes out into the field with them, he makes sure they eat in the grass, whatever. Faithful shepherd means he's doing a good job. A shepherd of faith means he makes the animal eat and internalize, because in order to eat, eating means internalizing the food. If you just put it on your stomach, you're not going to get full. You have to internalize it. So a faithful shepherd, every Jew has a munah. Every Jew believes in God. But the same Jew who believes in God will do an Aveda. Like we said many times, the Gemara says, a thief about to break in davens to Hashem to be successful. He's davening to Hashem means he has faith. And yet he's going against the will of Hashem. So this is the role of a Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu actually feeds that level of Amun amongst the Jews. Okay, there's another interesting thing earlier on in the Parsha. When in Perik Tes, Pasuk Yud Zayin, chapter 9, sentence 17. Okay, Moshe Rabbeinu is telling the story, because again, in this week's Parsha is last week's Parsha, the Ten Commandments. But Moshe Rabbeinu, at the beginning of the Parsha, is elaborating. You know, even Har Sinai got angry, and I was there for 40 days and 40 nights. I didn't eat, I didn't drink. And then God gave me the luches, and then God said to me, the Jews just sinned the golden calf. He's going through the whole story of the Eikev. Okay? And then he says like this. I saw that you sinned, I came down from heaven. And then it says like this. V'et beis, in sentence 17. V'et beis b'shnei haloches. I grabbed onto the two loches. V'ashlichem me'al shtei yodei. I threw him down. V'ashabrem le'nechem, and I broke him to your eyes. You know, Moshe Rabbeinu broke the loches. Right? The Jews were worshipping idols. He comes down straight. They just got married, and they're already committing adultery with idols. So Moshe Rabbeinu held the luchis, and as our sages explained, it was either a choice at that time. And this was instinctive of Moshe Rabbeinu. He's coming down with the luchis, okay? Either Jews go or Torah goes, because right now the Jews worshiping idols, they can't get the Torah. So one of the two got to go. In fact, the Medrash, Rashi quotes a Medrash that what did Moshe Rabbeinu do? Was like the prince just got married. A prince just got married, and he committed adultery. So what did a friend of the king do? He knew the king can't tolerate his son committing adultery. He's going to have to kill him because he's the prince. What did the friend of the king do? He ripped apart the marriage contract of the prince, as if to say he was never married. If he was never married, he never committed adultery. And the king thanked him for it. So it says the same thing. Moshe Rabbeinu is coming down. There's God. There's the Jewish people. They just committed adultery, worshipping idols. Right? There's the marriage contract. He's coming down with the marriage contract called the Torah. And he says, something got to go here. Because if I don't break the Torah, the Jews are going to get killed. And Moshe Rabbeinu realized, and God thanked him for it. God told him, Yasher koichacha. Thank you for breaking the luchos. Okay? The Gemara says, and Rashi is the last Rashi in Chumash, Hashem said to Moshe Rabbeinu, thank you for breaking the luchos. Why did Moshe Rabbeinu break the luchos? He said, one of the two got to go. Now who am I going to save? Torah or the Jews? And Moshe Rabbeinu realized Jews are greater than Torah, and he broke the luchos. He didn't know he was going to get another set. That was it. As far as he was concerned, he didn't know they can get the second luchos with more Torah on it. He broke the luchos because Moshe Rabbeinu realized. But the question the commentators all ask is, why did he have to grab them? He was holding them. The pasuk says before, Moshe Rabbeinu was coming down from Har Sinai, holding the luchos. Okay? Then it says, I grabbed them with my two hands, and I grabbed them and they broke. Why did he have to grab them? He was holding them. The pasuk just said before he was holding them. Say he broke them. Why does it have to say he was holding them? He grabbed them. So here's a very interesting concept over here. Who did the luchos belong to?
Hashem.
No, he gave it to the Jews.
He was still holding.
No, Torah lo b'shemen. Torah's not in there. Yeah, but Moshe Rabbeinu was holding him. He was on his way down already.
No, he's pulling it out of his hand at this point.
Who?
Isn't there a
What's that? Let me just, if you think about it, Moshe Rabbeinu was coming down from Har Sinai, holding the luchos. Okay? Let's take the pasuk simple. Okay? Simple meaning. He's walking down the mountain with the luchos, and all of a sudden he sees the ego. Okay? And he broke the luchos. Another opinion says the luchos were very heavy. They were held up by a divinely power in it, and that left, and the luchos pushed too heavy. But it says he threw him down. Simple meaning is he threw him down. Okay? But why did he have to grab them if he's holding them? Just say he broke the luchos. And another question the commentaries ask, the luchos belonged to the Jewish people. Moshe Rabbeinu was their representative to get it. Who gave him a right to damage the Jews' property? It wasn't his. It belonged to the Jews. So number one, why wasn't he called a mazik, damaging? And why wasn't he called a thief? He took it away from the Jews. Why was he allowed to do it? So he says, okay, you can't say he damaged because he saved the Jewish people. By breaking it, he saved them. So you can't say he was, okay. But the question is, why did Moshe Rabbeinu have to grab the luchos? Okay? He says like this. So the commentaries answer this. By grabbing the luches, even though he had nobody to grab it from, but he grabbed them, means in a halachic sense, he grabbed them away from all the Jews. It was the Jews. He was representing the Jews. He comes down there, he has to get it away from them. So he grabbed it away from, not physically from the Jews, but he grabbed it away from the Jews, and then it became his, and then it wasn't his anymore. Okay? Now, what does it mean? Moshe Rabbeinu loved the Jews tremendously. Okay? He broke the luches, even though in other words, I'm just thinking how to say it. He grabbed it away from the Jews, that it should become his, that the Jews shouldn't be punished now because it wasn't theirs. The Torah is not theirs, it's his now. So he never went against Torah because it was his, not theirs. Now, it means like this. In the Ten Commandments, in Parshat Yisro and what we read last week, it says, Aneich Hashem Elokecha, singular. If you notice, all the 10 commandments are singular. In Shema we see Ani Hashem Elokechem. The 10 commandments is Anechi Hashem Elokecha. Lo sirtzach, lo signov. It doesn't say lo tignovu, lo sirtzachu. It doesn't say plural. It says singular. Okay? So the commentaries discuss why were not the 10 commandments said in Shema, in this week's Parsha. Asher nechi metzave eschem, plural. Why do you say singular? So there's a few answers. One answer is because you know the way Jews work. When you ask a group of people to do something, what's the first thing that enters everybody? Somebody else should do it. Not me. It means somebody else. If Hashem would say, I'm God, you God, plural, don't steal, plural, all that, everybody says, okay, it means everybody else, not me. So Hashem says, Aneich Hashem Elokecha, I'm talking to you, individual. You don't steal. Don't tell me somebody. I'm not speaking collectively. I'm talking to every single Jew. Don't steal, don't kill, don't commit adultery, don't keep Shabbos honoring your father and mother. I'm talking to every single Jew. Because God knows the way the Jews work. He means everybody else. But then Rashi brings down a remarkable, deeper concept. Rashi in Yisro says, why did Hashem say, Aneich Hashem Elokecha? He gave Moshe Rabbeinu an opening to defend the Jews. When the Jews sinned in the golden calf, and Hashem screamed at Moshe Rabbeinu, your people are sinning, the Medrash says, you know what Moshe Rabbeinu said to Hashem? You never commanded them not to worship idols. You said it to me singular. Anechi Hashem Elokecha. Moshe Rabbeinu, I am God, your God. You never spoke to the Jews. So Hashem gave him an out. You know, it's a good defense attorney to get an out that the Jews shouldn't be punished. So that's what Moshe Rabbeinu did. Moshe Rabbeinu loved the Jews so much. Okay, he acquired it to make it his. Once it's his, he can break them. They're not the Jews anymore. What?
Well, when Hashem spoke to the entire Jewish people at Mount Sinai in the first 2 commandments, to everybody, not just Moshe Rabbeinu.
But he spoke singular.
So,
why did Hashem say it's singular? So the first simple answer, like we said, because God's saying, I mean you and you and you and you. I don't mean them. That means nobody. Okay? Singular. But the deeper thing is Hashem did it that Moshe Rabbeinu should be able to defend the Jews in their sin. And that's why you have to fight to grab the luchas away.
So Hashem thought ahead of time.
Hashem knows, yeah. Hashem is ahead of the time. Okay, another interesting thing over here in Perek Yud Aleph Pasuk Yud Beis. Okay, it speaks about the greatness of Eretz Yisrael. In Shishi, in chapter Yud Aleph Pasuk Yud, it says, the land that you're going to is not like Egypt. You're going to, it's a beautiful land. And it says like this, Eretz Asher Hashem Elokecha Doirishosa. It's a land that God always seeks out. Chapter 11, Pasuk Yud Beit, 12. Tamid Eini Hashem Elokecha. The Rebbe always used to quote this pasuk when people would speak about Eretz Yisrael, that's dangerous and this and that. The Rebbe would quote this pasuk always. God supervised the land Mereishis Hashana Vad Achar Shana, from the beginning of the year until the end of the year. Okay? So simply the pasuk is saying that God supervises and cares about Eretz Yisrael from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. Now right away starts a new year, right? So basically the pasuk is saying that God is constantly supervising the land of Israel. Eretz Yisrael. So in Tanya, the Alter Rebbe asks, so why doesn't it just say Eini Hashem Elokecha ba la'olam va'ed, forever? Why does it say from the beginning of the year until the end of the year? Obviously then it means right away starting again. So why is the pasuk saying Mereishis from beginning of the year to the end of the year? Why doesn't it just say Le'olam Va'ed, forever? You could be saying Oleinu, Le'olam Va'ed, right? Kamal Shochi. So the Alter Rebbe explains like this. First, if you notice in the Chumash, the word this Rashi quotes, Mereishis, normally in Hebrew, Reishis is spelled Reish Aleph Shin Yud Saf. Here there's no Aleph. It's Mereishis Mem Reish Shin Yud Saf. So Chazal say that take away the mem means from, but Reish Shin Yud Tov is the same letters as Tishrei, which means Rosh Hashanah. Tishrei, the first day of the year, right? Rosh Hashanah. So that's the Alter Rebbe says like this. Why is the pasuk saying God supervises the land from the beginning of the year to the end of the year? Why doesn't he just say forever? So the Alter Rebbe says because every Rosh Hashanah comes down a new revelation of godliness that never existed before.
New creation.
It's a new creation, it's a new year, it's a new revelation. If the pasuk would have said God supervises the land forever, it would mean, yeah, the same supervision is always.
But does that mean it's linked to the merit? Because it's
No, Hashem supervises the land anyway. But here it means, Mereishis Hashanah V'Achar Shana means that every year on Rosh Hashanah comes down a new revelation of godliness that never existed before. Therefore, every Rosh Hashanah we have to become better people because now is a greater connection with Hashem. We have to accept a new observance or better of a mitzvah or more, just doing it qualitatively, quantitatively more. But again, and the Rebbe said, that's what it says in Tanya, but our Rebbe says that the same thing applies, not only in Rosh Hashanah. Every Sukkot is a new revelation that never existed. Every Chanukah, every Purim, every Pesach, every Shavuos. Every year, it's a new revelation that never existed before.
But it's more concealed also at the same time, right?
It's a greater revelation that is more concealed because the times of Golus, by definition, conceal. And the Golus is closer to Mashiach, is getting darker. But that's why when it's darker, by the way, it says in Sfarim, the darkest part of the night is right before dawn. Which means the darkest part in Jewish history is right before Mashiach. That's the darkest part of the night is right before the coming of Mashiach. But the darker it is, the brighter the light shines. There's a Gemara that says, Shraga betiana mayhane. You light a candle during daylight, it doesn't do anything. Because the sun is so powerful, what does it do? At night you light a candle, it can light up a room. So yes, granted, you're right, that it's much darker in Golus, but then the mitzvahs shine much brighter. What?
Isn't it, you just read about in the Shema, that whole paragraph about if we behave, we get the grass, we get all the good things. If we don't, so it's not conditional? Wouldn't you say it's conditional? Depending on our behavior?
Yeah. But Eretz Yisrael, though, That's not in Vayim Shemaya. That's next to Vayim Shemaya. This is before Vayim Shemaya. Hashem says to the Jewish people, the land that you're going to, meaning Eretz Yisrael, like this is the 40th year, they're going straight in, after Moshe Rabbeinu passes away, they're going to Eretz Yisrael. So Moshe Rabbeinu says it's a land that God supervises continuously.
But the land, but the people, what about us?
The people, like Rashi says, there's an pasuk in Chumash, I believe in Chumash. It says, "V'leisaki haaretz eschem betamachem eisa." Literally means the land should not vomit you out when you impurify the land. And Rashi quotes in the Medrash that Eretz Yisrael, it's holy land, right? It's like a very refined stomach. A very refined stomach can handle coarse food. If a refined stomach eats coarse food, it's going to throw up. It's going to vomit. Eretz Yisrael can't tolerate impurity. But that's the people's behavior on the land. The land is holy.
Is that from our forefathers? Or did we get
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
They made it holy.
Not only that, it says in Sfarim, when Avram Avinu bought Ma'aras HaMachpelah for 400 shekels, it says in the Sefer, the brother Mrami Prague, he writes that according to the cheshbon of redeeming fields, 400 shekel kesef is the equivalent of redeeming 600,000 square cubits. That means when Avram Avinu bought Ma'aras HaMachpelah, he actually bought a square cubit, and a cubit is like 1.5 feet, 2 feet. He bought a square cubit for every single Jew in Eretz Yisrael. The 600,000 major neshamas. Avram Avinu, by buying Ma'aras HaMachpelah, bought a piece of land that every Jew owns land in Israel. And therefore nobody can give it away. It's not ours to give away. It's Hashem. It's the nation. Nobody can give away land. But the land is holy, and Hashem supervises the land regardless. By the way, even if you look today, the miracles that are happening in the war with Iran and with the missiles and everything that's going on, I mean, you just open your eyes, it's unbelievable miracles. Unbelievable miracles. It's not, so Hashem supervises and protects the land.
But are these things, I mean, even though we're protected, we still have to bear the brunt of that.
Yes, we have to do the job.
But I'm also saying that we're still getting attacked with missiles and all the other things.
Correct.
Why is Hashem allowing that to happen?
He wants us to, I guess, behave. Hashem wants, like in Shema, in this week, what the Vayim Shemaya, right? If you listen to Mitzvah Hashem, you'll get all the good things. You don't listen, I'm going to hold back the rain, you're not going to get, you're going to get driven out of the land. That's it, you're not going to have anything. Okay, it's later. Okay, so once again, this Wednesday night there's no class, but the Mitzvah Hashem, next Monday will be class.